Okay, okay. Take your seats. Settle down. Settle down. Welcome to the Road to Concord 101. This class is about all things connected to the path of history leading from Mount Sinai to Lexington Green and the individual liberty and freedom of man. If you're in the wrong place, feel free to get up and go see the registrar's office about dropping this class, preferably before you meet the professor. In the event you do not already know this, your professor is Joe Bakanovic, and he has a bit of a reputation on campus. He is most definitely an acquired taste, but if you can learn to tolerate him, he will make you better at defending your position, whatever it may be. I'm T.A. Charlie. I'm here to help the professor, but more importantly, you. We encourage you to take notes, and if you have questions, feel free to call. If you'd like the number, please email us. You can also post your questions in the comments, and we'll get the professor's attention. Part of my job is to let you know a little bit about your professor. As I said earlier, the professor has that bit of a reputation on campus. Not all of it is good. Let me help explain a little with a story about how I came to be the professor's TA. I was invited to attend one of his classes. My first impression of the professor was that he was an egotistical, narcissistic know-it-all. My intent after only a few minutes of class was never to attend another class with this professor. But after class, Professor Joe came up to me and thanked me for my class participation and told me that my perspective was valuable, and he asked me to keep coming to class. This actually took me back a little. To me, he seemed inconsistent. What was I to do? I decided to continue coming to his classes. As I did, I actually started doing what he does encourage students to do. Check behind him and see if what he is teaching is actually correct. I have done this over and over again, and generally speaking, I found what he teaches to be backed by sound, valid, and rational arguments from reputable sources. When I have challenged him and provided a sound, valid, and rational argument in opposition to his current position, he immediately changed his position and thanked me for correcting him. Why do I tell you all this? Professor Joe is a little rough around the edges, especially in the way he delivers his content. But if you stick with him and listen to what he teaches and then go and check his sources, you will likely find, as I did, he will help you better understand the world around you and help you to think better and hopefully to live better. At least that is our hope. One last note. This class builds on itself. Therefore, it is important to attend class regularly. We will not always have time to go over previously covered material. If you are new, we suggest you watch our older classes. We've created playlists to help you with those things we feel are of special importance. Now, let's get started. Morning, folks. Yeah, I'm still on the screen and I have to be here today. I'm going to introduce the show a little bit today for a good reason. I was with Joe in the pre-show for about a half an hour and my brain is already mush. So, first of all, what we're going to cover today may or may not be capital T truth, but you're going to have to be the judge of this. You know, where we have our introduction and it says go back and check behind us. You're going to need to do that. And by the way, you're going to need a full 5-point harness, helmet, you know, the whole giddy up, because the phones are on. We'll be monitoring the comments. If you have questions, please post your questions, because today is going to, I guarantee, warp your mind. And you may even have troubles keeping up. I was. So that's just letting you know what you're in for today, because Yeah, this is going
Oh
to
no, we're
be
not going to
a
get
show.
banned for this one. YouTube
No,
and the
no,
AI
no.
won't even know how to
Yeah,
follow this
YouTube and
show today.
YouTube and stuff. They won't even comprehend what we're talking about today. Although it was asking for my age on YouTube today, and I'm the road to Concord. I don't have an age, but anyway, that's another story. But I was able to bring the feed up, so I'll work on that later. But anyway, I'll turn the reins over to the professor, and good luck, folks. You're going to need it.
All right. I was going to start talking to you about the Constitution, but given the results of our recent elections, especially what's happening in Virginia and in New York City and a couple of other places, I was troubled with that, folks. It really bothered me, and I started thinking, why the heck should I teach the principles upon which this nation was founded when nobody in this world even cares anymore? And I don't mean nobody. I'm speaking in generalities here, broad stroke, broad brush. So I found myself thinking about the nature of the people who would vote for these folks. I mean, they elected a man who openly celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk and was dreaming about putting a bullet in the Republicans. He was dreaming about murdering political opponents, and they elected him. People elected him. And I got to thinking about, what the heck? And then for whatever reason, this is a spirit thing in my world, I picked this book back up. This is Jonathan Cahn's The Dragon Prophecy. I got this a couple of years ago. And Natasha, throw the link up on the feeds if you don't mind in the comment section. You'll find the link in the Rumble description if you want it later. You can go back and get it. But for whatever reason, when I first got this book, I started reading it, and I didn't get 3 pages into it before my mind just started running. And I never got back to it. And I got back to it again last night, and I'm like, there it is. I now understand what's going on with people better than I ever have in my life. And this is a Holy Spirit thing. And that's going to be the connection. This is going to be an apologetics class, folks. And oh my gosh, I'm terrified about doing this. Either I'm on to something cool, but at a really high level. I mean, we are talking PhD level theology. Or I'm crossing the line of heresy. And that's one of the reasons Charlie has to be here today. So that if I say something that's bad, he'll jump in and whoa, hoss, or ask me to redirect and explain. But before we get going, I'm going to tell you right now that I'm reacting to a lot of what's in Jonathan Cahn's, the first chapter of his book. Depending on how long I go today, I might even read sections of it. But I have to explain something to you that I've had worked out or been working out in my mind for a while. Let me do this first. I do not think when you mention the word supernatural, I don't think in the terms that most people do. I do not think magical or mystical or non-existent. I don't think in those terms at all, because I understand what it means. Super, above, higher, beyond the natural world. Transcendent would be a better word. I've come to start thinking in terms that would be closer to thinking as planes or dimensions. Planes is actually a better way of explaining it, but our world today is more comfortable with talking about like different dimensions, interdimensional. And I've started to understand the world this way. And then I've been doing some work with Christian rationalism because of the Declaration of Independence study. And I've run into where if you go to gotquestions.org, they'll tell you it's a heresy. You go to Bible Hub, it'll just tell you that these are Christian rationalism is a philosophy or a discipline of thought where reason is actually a tool to help you expand and better understand, expand your understanding and knowledge of the Bible, better understand what it's teaching. Well, Jonathan Cahn, in his book, makes the comment that you cannot reason with the supernatural. I disagree. I disagree very strongly. Logic is a transcendent reality. It exists everywhere at all times. If there was nothing but this material world, just the material world, logic would not exist. It can't. If it's just the material world, then logic is an irrelevancy. Good and evil are irrelevant. They do not have. This is where it's hard for me to explain to folks because they very seldom sit down and think this way. If all you are is in the material world, good and evil do not exist for the lion and the zebra. They don't. They don't even think about them. Because to the lion and zebra, there is no such thing as good and evil. It's just what is. The lion is not committing murder when he kills the zebra and eats it. And the zebra doesn't think that there's anything unjust about it. Just sucked to be him that day. He couldn't outrun the lion and couldn't defend himself. So it was his turn, circle of life type of thing. There's no such thing as good and evil there. So there would be no such thing as logic either. There's no rhyme or reason to that. You can't logic your way through why the world exists that way. So the existence of good and evil are transcendent concepts, and they exist in what we would think of as abstraction. Now, I'm not worried about defining them. That's not what I'm after right now. What I'm telling you is that they're transcendent ideas, and logic and reason is a transcendent idea. Their very existence points to a higher plane, what we might think of as the spiritual world. We're going to keep going with this here for a minute, but what I want to explain is those believers who think that reason has no place in religion either have not thought this through or they've been taught wrong. Theology literally means the philosophy of God, or study of God. Literally, that's a philosophy. That's a study. It's logical thinking. It employs logic. We've got no problem. Oh, yeah, theology. Yeah, that's got my theology degree. It tells me just faith and faith alone, unreasoning faith. Well, that's not theology. That's an antithesis to theology. It's a negation of the very word and the meaning of the word. So you have to use reason. The problem is we don't stop and understand what we're talking about with reason. You can use reason in this physical world, and you're going to talk about physical things that we finite, non-eternal beings can think of and feel and touch and conceive of based in the physical reality in which we live. But if there is a spiritual higher plane or even a lower one, like Sheol, you can still use the exact same rules of logic, but you're going to be talking about spiritual things, spiritual concepts. And because these things exist outside of human understanding, finite humanity, because we know that this transcendent world, it must last longer than this world. This world is heading toward oblivion. It's going to peter out eventually, if we have enough time, into nothingness. It'll be a cold, black, dead, lifeless void. If all you think of is physics, we know that the universe is going to expand into nothingness. It'd take forever to do it by our means of things, but if you're in eternity, it'll happen in a blink of an eye. It's nothing. So in order for us to understand these spiritual things, you have to think in different terms. That's why most religious conversation or topics are explained in either personifications, and you treat the gods and spiritual things just like they're humans, just spiritual reflections of humanity. And that is one of the hallmark characteristics of paganism. Or you have to talk about them in analogy. You have to use analogies. Yes, paganism, that type of world, it would be completely atheistic, and chaos would ensue. Yes, Bupa, perfect. So we have to speak in analogies if we're talking about spiritual truths, like evil and good and evil, things like this. And that's why a lot of the prophets speak in symbolic language. It's an analogy. So what I'm going to posit is this. This world in which we think we live, this universe, is part of a greater creation. And in just a minute, I'm going to take you to the book of Genesis, and I'm going to explain something, but then I'm going to start warping brains. And a lot of you are going to throw suckers in the dirt. You're going to start screaming at me, and I might have to ask Charlie to help me explain that I'm not entirely crazy here. So what I'm going to say is that this physical world, the material world, it's just part of the greater creation. Now, I do not think that, from what I understand, I do not think that this is not necessarily what was created in Genesis. So let me take you here and share this with you. Now, just follow me. Just don't try to just hear me out. Just listen. We're on Bible Hub, and we're looking at the Interlinear Bible. And this is literal translation in English of the Hebrew words. So Bereshit, or Bereshit, in beginning, created Elohim, the heavens and the earth. Well, yeah, Joe, he created the space and the earth and sky and earth. And not necessarily. Not necessarily. When I looked at what heavens meant, it can mean the spiritual realm. So I'm thinking, is it possible that what Yahweh first created was just the spirit world, just that dimension in which the spirit world is going to live? And understand, he's outside of that. He doesn't exist in that realm. So he created the realm where all the spirit angels are going to live, and the earth, Eretz or Haras. Now, most of the time that means either dirt or the globe we call the earth, a third rock from the sun. But not necessarily. The etymology on this, if I'm understanding this correctly, is a little uncertain. It could come from a root word meaning firm, which idea of firmament. But I did find that in some lexicons, it can be used to mean the world. Now we think globe, but not necessarily. The world is, even in English today, a generic catch-all phrase for the universe. Okay, it's an amorphic word or term. It has many meanings. It's really malleable. It can be stretched over many ideas. So what if, and since I believe the book of Genesis is a polemic, and it's talking to the Mesopotamian mind, the ancient Near East mind, this is not trying to talk to you about physics. This is just trying to talk to you about theological concepts about who created the world, how, when, how did it work. So what I want you to do is I want you to try and go on a little logic journey with me, and let's start using a little theological logic. And part of the problem there is we're going to be dealing mostly in analogy, okay? Not hard, concrete thinking. So God creates the realm in which things are going to exist. And then he creates the universe inside that realm. So what you and I might think of as the universe exists in the plane, the dimension that is the heavens. That's the spiritual realm. That's the plane or dimension in which it exists. And then he creates all the firmament. Okay, whatever that is. And what's the next verse tell us? It says, verse number 2, and the earth, the firmament, the whatever he created, was formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the spirit of Elohim was hovering over the face of the waters. This is a prophetic book. It's poetic, it's a polemic, it's prophetic. It's going to be using I'm going to read it as though I'm reading the prophets. So the firmament, whatever it was that was created in this plane, in the spiritual plane, was formless and void. It had no form. It was just like, this is an analogy. This is not telling you this is how it is. But if you're studying quantum physics today, a lot of the people who are rejecting God and trying to explain quantum physics, how the universe could come to be, posited that in the beginning, the universe was nothing but an empty void of a energy. It's just an empty energy void. You had all this energy just kind of vibrating, sitting there in nothingness. There was nothing existed, no matter, nothing, just energy. Well, that's one way of saying a formless void. There's no order in it. That's what darkness is. Darkness is, in this sense, in this analogy sense, this spiritual logic, darkness does not mean lawlessness or chaos. Well, it does mean lawlessness. It doesn't mean evil. It means law. It means there's no law. There's no order. There's no structure to the formlessness. So I'm sorry. So think about it this way. Darkness is not evil. It's just the absence of order. So Yahweh's spirit is hovering over the face of the deep. The deep is the ocean, and the ocean is it's the prophetic word for chaos. This is the primordial chaotic existence. So this could be, if I read this as a prophet, there's parallelism going on here. The thing that was created is formless and void, and disorder is hovering over the face of the disordered void, the face of the waters. That works for me. I'm understanding this. Charlie, are you seeing where I'm going with this at all?
Yeah, and I was just going to mention too that the first verse, a lot of people put too much into that. That's just an introductory thing as far as literary things saying, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. And then as we're going into the verses here, he's explaining how that process worked, at least from this. And I believe, like you, that this is a polemic thing. So it's showing how Yahweh is over all this stuff and, replaces the other gods of the Mesopotamians and such like that.
Well, since you read Hebrew, do you also see what, I'm not saying it is, but do you also see how I could possibly see a little bit of parallelism here between the first half and the second half of this line?
Yeah, yes, I can see that.
It's a different way of saying the formless whatever. The void is formless and dark. In other words, it's just got no form and it's got no order. And then on the bottom was hovering over the deep is the form, and
that's
the
waters
is
deep, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a parallelism.
Yeah, because this is all from if you understand the Mesopotamian creation story, this is all mirroring that, except
but
it's
reversing
showing how Yahweh is in charge over all of this, right?
Yep. So now here's what I want you to see here. And Yahweh, said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Now, a lot of us would think, okay, let there be Jesus. Well, yes, because he is the word of Yahweh. Let the word go forth. What is the word? Well, John says it's the Logos. This is the conscious will and mind. In the ancient Greek, that's the conscious will and mind of the universe. The problem is that personifies the universe. That's Gnosticism. I reject that. Jesus is the living Logos, the living will or decrees of the Father, of Yahweh. So he's the Devar. He's the light. But in the metaphorical sense, the spiritual logic, light is order. Light is lawfulness. Light is, in this universe, it's the physical laws of physics, but it's also the moral revealed law of Yahweh. So if you go back, and this is how I got here today, and Charlie, you're going to love this. I'll leave this up for now. This is why I got here today. This is the whole thinking. I'm in the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence, the phrase nature and nature's God, takes me back to Aquinas and some of the early church fathers. And they said that that's the Logos. It's the revealed law of Yahweh. And it's also the natural law. They said the natural law is the law of experience and observance. It's law of works in this sense. It's how you live in the physical, what we would think of as natural law.
Right.
Then the revealed law, that's the law that Yahweh explains to us. In other words, he's explaining how that natural law is supposed to work. The ancients said that the moral law is natural law. It's part of the revealed law, is part of the natural law. So in a sense, when Messiah said, "I didn't come to destroy the law, I came to fulfill it," he's telling you, I didn't come to separate the moral from the physical. I came to explain to you how the moral law derives from the physical laws of this universe, a la my theory of natural law. So everything I worked out for you the last 6 weeks on the road to Concord about I think, therefore I am, gets you to the 10 Commandments. That's just Messiah coming to explain that to you. That's what the prophets were explaining to us. So the revealed law is just Yahweh fulfilling his natural law. That's what was in the ancient Christian theologians' mindset when they come up with these terms. That's what ended me up on this thinking here. So let there be light, let there be law. Not natural and revealed, just law. The Messiah is all of this. You tracking with this, Charlie?
Yeah.
All All right. So then that's going to get us to this. Genesis 1:4. And Elohim saw that the light was good. Good in the fact that it accomplished its purpose. It does its job. And God divided between the light and between the darkness, between order and disorder. He divided them, not the way we're thinking. He didn't say, okay, I made light and I made darkness. I'm going to divide them with my hands. No, the darkness just naturally existed, because when he says, let there be, he didn't say, let there be an ordered existence. He just said, okay, let it be. And then he said, okay, now here's the order I want to impart on this. He divided the light and the darkness in this sense, order and chaos, simply by creating the light. The darkness is just a natural result of things. This is the last verse I want to read here, but though, and called God the light day, and darkness he called night, and there was evening and there was morning one day. Where's the sun, Charlie?
Ain't there. Not yet.
So this is not morning and night the way we think of it.
Not in the traditional sense, no.
So I don't know, and I don't want to run in this direction right now. But hold on, Charlie, stay there. I don't know what this means by light and night and day here in this case. I don't care. That's
Well,
not.
I think
I'm working out logic, spiritual logic here.
if I were just thinking of this logically, this is the instantiation of time on this realm.
Could be. Could very well be. Yes. But now if I'm an ancient Near East Mesopotamian, I also just established the pattern of rebirth, growth, decay, and death. The pattern that is going to work in this universe. If I'm an ancient Mesopotamian. Now, we understand Garden of Eden, there was no death. Well, no, it doesn't necessarily say that. We are never told that they were not going to die. They hadn't eaten of the tree of life yet. We're never told that. We assume a lot of things into the scriptures that the scriptures don't tell us one way or the other. So we don't know. We don't know. But this is going to speak to the pattern, the reoccurring patterns of life. The seasons. That's also going to speak to the seasons. So the idea of night and day, that's going to speak to an ancient as the pattern and rhythm of the law of life, the rhythms of this universe. So that could very well be part of the polemic of that's part of the light. That's part of Yahweh's order. You see where I'm going with this one, Charlie?
Yeah. I'm starting to. We're already. We lost Deltros already. So.
Okay. I know, and it's going to get even worse here in just a minute.
Yeah. Hold on. You're not done yet.
All right. So let me just get through the fall before we go to the bottom of the hour of the break. So we all know about the fall, right? And stay with me, Charlie. That term is never used in the Bible. It never calls it the fall. But here's what I want. When we come back, we're going to talk about evil specifically. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about how it helps with our politics. But the fall is our way of explaining what happened. Well, I posited, I'm thinking out loud, and I don't think this is going to create a heresy, but Charlie, sin cannot exist in the presence of the Father, can it?
No.
Okay. Be snapped out of existence.
Be destroyed. Yep.
All right. If in the beginning, everything was created such that it was all part of one world, one existence, this physical world could actually access the what we think of as spirit. What if they were all one? So the angels are part of the world, and they can come and go and interact with Adam and Eve, hence the Nakash and Yahweh walking with Adam. So it's all one existence. It's just that we were created as, in my Father's house, there are many, many rooms. So he created another room and he made man. He's got the angels, he's got man, etc. Sin enters into this realm. The very first time, not only did, we're told that the devil sins or whatever. Let's not get into that right now. We'll do that next hour. Sin enters into this realm. That realm can no longer exist where Yahweh exists. It's got to be separated. So what does Yahweh do? The fall. He creates two more realms. So you have the highest heavenly realm, then you have earth, and then you have underneath that is the realm of death, the pit. At that point in time, that would be, if I'm right, that's when the devil would have to be cast out of heaven. Because he's the embodiment of sin. He isn't sin. He isn't evil in its sense that he is evil. No. We'll get to that next hour. but he's the embodiment of this stuff. And he's caused man to sin. Sin has now entered the universe. Yahweh must separate it somehow, put a veil between it. Otherwise, all of creation is going to wink out of existence. So we have what we call the fall. Death has entered the world. Sin, death, same there. And the devil has become the king over this world, over death. He's seized dominion from Adam. But now we're a fallen world where death and decay exist. So now that night and day take on an even new meaning. Now it's death and life or whatever, but there's the separation of your realms. The logic that used to exist just in this one realm now extends to all three. Logic still extends. It's just you're dealing with different worlds, a perceived world and a non-perceived world. And the spiritual beings who are lawful can still pass between all the realms. But the spiritual beings who are not lawful cannot ascend back up into heaven. Because otherwise, Satan would ascend and descend. And what would that do to our passage about who has descended and ascended?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Well, can't do that. So if an angel is sent to go do something, they can do that because they're sent, and then they can go back to the spiritual realm. They can do these things. Satan can't, which would mean that the Satan you see in the Job story is not the devil. Because as a embodiment of sin, right there in the presence of the king, he would cease to exist. And that's actually taught in scripture. The sin cannot exist with the Father. So the fall was Yahweh's way of protecting his creation from evil, sin, from the results or the ramifications of evil and sin. So we're about to go to is this track for you, Charlie?
Yeah. Hopefully everybody else.
Am I heretical here?
I don't think so. I mean, this seems to lay down. I mean, we are making a few, leaps here, and
I know that. I'm saying that.
So, but it seems to fit logically.
I'm going somewhere with where I'm going with this.
Yeah. So I mean,
Ray 13's ahead of the lesson plan.
Yeah, it seems to track for me too. So yeah.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about evil, the nature of evil. Folks, evil is not a created thing. It was not created. Yahweh did not create evil. And he didn't create darkness. Not in the sense that most of us think. So when we come back, we're going to have a half-hour discussion about the nature of evil. And then we'll do the top of the hour break. And then we might have just a few minutes about what this means for us and for our politics, what's going on in our country right now. Oh boy, do I think I can tie a nice big pretty ribbon on this at the end of the show. I hope you'll stick with us. I know I'm pushing some of you. Just ride this buck and bronco out for this show. See you in 3 minutes. Charlie? Okay, now's where it's going to get, welcome back, get in your seat, buckle up. Now's where it's going to get a little fun. So I'm reading through Jonathan Cahn's book on the Red Dragon's prophecy. And he argues some things in there that I agree with, but he makes leaps that I disagree with. And it's not because Cahn's wrong. It's because Cahn is charging after a different point that he blows right by a little logical fallacy he commits. He's not he made a weaker argument than should have been. It's salvageable. And I'm going to do that for him right now. Okay, he's going to say that evil is not created, and he's correct. Evil and good. Good is created. Good in the sense that we're using it here. Good being that it performs its function as it was intended to do. So if something is created to do a job and it does it well, does it, as close to perfectly as it can exist in this universe, that's good. Good can exist without bad or evil. It can. It does. But the fact that evil exists, it wasn't created. It's the equal and opposite reaction of this universe, even the spiritual universe. In the spiritual universe, there is equal and opposite reaction. So when good was created, evil became the opposite reaction. Only in this case, evil doesn't just happen. Evil is connected to choice. The concept of evil is connected to choice. Choice leads us to personhood. Choice is not something that your desk does. Your desk doesn't make a choice. And now your book can't make a choice. Your computer's not making choices. And to the extent that you think it is, it's just executing a program. So it has no choice to do that either. The minute you tell it to execute the program, it's going to do what it's told to do. That's not free will. That's not, and where there's no free will, there's no choice. So evil is connected to the concept of choice, and choice to free will, and free will to personhood. Evil is not personhood. If it was, and this is the mistake Cahn makes, he argues that the devil is evil and he's got personhood and he's the source of all evil. If that were the case, then he was created. In which case Yahweh, he is a created being, which means evil was created, which means Yahweh created evil. That's not the case. Creation of free will created the possibility of rebellion. Okay, it created the opportunity to go against your designed purpose. So as long as a computer is just exercising a program, that's not free will. And as long as it doesn't have free will, it is never going to be alive and sentient in the sense that man thinks. Even if it's writing its own program, it is still just executing code. The computer boils down to ones and zeros, doing what ones and zeros do. That's it. It may look like it's alive, and that suits my discussion here very well. Charlie, you're a computer geek. Pop on here for a second. Remember how I was telling you before the show that I'm starting to think of spirits not as demons and devils and angels and Elohim, but as some sort of a power or a just an ethereal force of some sort?
Right.
Can you see how we could align that to a program? The program has no choice. It just does.
Right.
All right. Now, if we're in spiritual mode and we were thinking spirit logic, transcended above, well, then that might not quite be the case. The spirit is influential, but not necessarily conscious in the way we would think of personhood. Why am I saying it this way? Okay, if you have this, the spirit would be the power through which Yahweh enforces or makes his will known or does things. That's the Holy Spirit. The spirit of evil, the spirit of your father, the devil, whatever. If the spirit of evil were a person, how could it exist in the spiritual realm where Yahweh is? Couldn't. No. But if it's just like some ephemeral force or being that influences us and it permeates our fallen world, we can answer to it or not through our choice. It still might influence us, but it's like what I was telling you. If the cold front moves through, you might put on a coat, or you might turn up the heat, or, you might make another choice. You might make a fire. How we react to that force, that influence that creates morality. That's our morality. Is this tracking with you at all?
Yeah,
Am I losing everybody here?
You may be. This is
All right.
This is where it gets tricky.
So the idea of evil is, think of it as the negation of
Use
good.
the force, Luke.
Yeah. No, that's where this comes from. That's where this thing, that is the negation of the biblical idea of things. That's a paganistic, Gnostic way of looking at this. It is.
Right.
And that's, Star Wars is Gnosticism. It's a form of it. But what I'm saying is, okay, Yahweh created us and he gave us a purpose and a function, and we have chosen not to perform that function the way we were told to do it. We chose to rebel, just like Satan did. The devil chose to rebel. Now you've got evil. It was an equal and opposite reaction of creating free will, but it wasn't necessary. You can have good without evil. You can have a free will that does not choose to sin, that doesn't choose rebellion. How do we know? Well, you still have angels in heaven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If they rebel, they have to be expelled. The Messiah, both, and this is how we know that he's not just man. He has to be divine, because he chose to go to the cross. He chose to do things, and he chose to live sinlessly. Those were choices. No man can do this. No human being can do this, because sin lives and dwells within us. It's the rebellion dwells within us. Evil is not a created thing. It is a reaction. But now here's the thing. It exists in a universe where, if we're going strictly by physical laws of the universe, evil doesn't exist. We've already established that. But yet it does. And even the strictest atheist, the most godless atheist, will tell you that maybe the Holocaust is evil, or racism is evil, or slavery is evil. And they'll speak in that language. And I can drive this point home. The very simple one is rape. Is rape evil? If you're living in nothing but a physical universe that operates by physical laws, no, that's evolution. Rape would just be the strongest male making sure that his genes are perpetuated. But yet, somehow or another, I think we'll all agree that the woman on the other end of this attack is going to think that there's a wrong being perpetuated. Well, even the most godless atheist will at some point admit that that's an evil. Uh-oh. Evil only exists in the transcended state, something above and outside of our physical realm. Evil only exists in relation to good. Light can exist without darkness. Darkness is defined as the absence of light, or in relation to light. Good can exist without disorder or rebellion or dysfunction, sin, evil. You can have all of these things. How do I put it? It's a relational thing. There are some things that are defined in terms of the other. Truth. Can we have truth without a lie? Can truth exist without lies?
Yes.
Can a lie exist without truth?
No.
That's because the definition of a lie, truth is an inherent part of it. The lie is defined in terms to truth. Evil is defined in terms to good. Well, if evil exists, therefore good must exist. And since evil is a transcendent term, good is a transcendent term. Well, if good is a transcendent existence, what have you just proved, Charlie? The existence of a creator.
Yes. Well, yeah, you do, because where did it come from?
Yeah. Because we're talking about laws, transcendent things that are above and outside of this physical world. So evil, rather than saying evil proves that the creator is an evil and immoral creator, evil actually proves the existence of a good, loving creator. Because he did not design us for disobedience and rebellion and evil. So what else does evil tell us? Evil is the negation of the good, of order, of lawfulness. It's the negation of existence. Well, if it is a negation, if it is an inversion, if the creation is ex nihilo, then what would evil be? Nihilism. we were created out of nothing, then evil's going to invert that, and it's going to seek to create nothing again, to destroy that which was created. Well, evil doesn't have that ability, not even Satan. So since Satan doesn't have that ability to destroy, what does he do? He will lead man to do the opposite of what he was created to do. He will make us dysfunctional. He will entice us to disobey our purpose, to go against anything but our purpose in this world. He'll lead us not to serve the Creator, not to serve fellow man, not to be good stewards. Are y'all seeing how this works now in the world? That's where murder comes from. That's where lust and envy and rape and pillaging and plundering, and that's where the destruction of our environment comes from. It's the seeking of wealth, the looking for power. It's anything outside of communion and relationship with the Father and our fellow man. It's anything outside of love. And remember, the Hebrew concept of love is the conscious choice to live within the intended order of society and of creation. That's a commitment to being lawful. Now, is this tracking for folks? Do you see where I'm going with this, Charlie?
Yeah, and I know, like, here, we'll put this one up here just for a second because I want to talk about this just for a second.
Okay.
You know, Foxy Joe's talking about this world is Satan's domain, right? Well, yes, but now since the advent of the Savior and his, death, burial, resurrection, his kingdom is enforced, but his kingdom is not of this realm. It's of the higher realm. And what the gospel plan is the restoration of this fallen realm into that spiritual realm by purging this evil out so that it's no longer there, so that it can abide again with Yahweh. Is that not what the gospel plan is, what the kingdom of Yahweh is all about?
That's my understanding. And what's more, remember, Satan was allowed to fool the nations or / Gentiles, to blind them, spiritually blind them so they can't see clearly. Well, he's bound at the cross. Well, we're not going to get into the eschatological thing here, but if he's bound at the cross, you have kingdom come, is coming, will come. So however you want to look at the millennial, it doesn't matter. He's bound, but bound does not mean removed.
No.
Bound means limited.
Yeah.
And there will come a time when he's loosed from the pit. He's let back out to fool the nations again. And what should we be looking for when that happens? The same conditions that existed in the world before the cross will come back. The same gods will come back. Hence, Return of the Gods, another one of Khan's books.
Right.
But you're also going to see the restoration of that which was before as well. So Israel as a nation is going to come back. This is reversing Hermon. Now,
and you also,
evil.
The days of Noah is also a prediction. So we're seeing
everybody
those
does what they
things.
think is right. Yep.
So
lawlessness will grow, and because lawlessness grows, the love of believers will grow cold. Because we'll get tired of each other being lawless. We won't have that love for our fellow man. So this is what evil is. Now, the reason I disagree with Jonathan Cahn as though it's a person is because here's the thing. You and I, how could we be evil? How could you have an evil human being if evil is the devil? Well, he made you evil. No, he didn't make you evil. He can't. He's under the influence of evil. And if the devil is a personification of evil in, the rebellion, let's just say rebellion of your intended order. It's the equal and opposite reaction of free will. You go the other way. Well, now that explains a whole lot to me in the scriptures. So when the Messiah tells the Pharisees, you are of your father, the devil. Now it's a personification, Satan, he's your spiritual father, but that's a personification.
Yes.
Now don't get me wrong. This is spiritual logic we're using. So to us finite fallen beings, it's okay to think of it as the devil as a person, just like it's okay to think of it as the Holy Spirit as a personification of Yahweh. That's fine. I got no problem with that. Okay, this is spiritual logic. Quit trying to think like a Greek. The logical rules still apply. We're just using different concepts. So Yahweh said the Pharisees are of their father. But did Satan actually make the Pharisees? Was he the one that gave them life and breathed life into them? No. Is he the one who created them? No, he can't create.
No.
So where'd they come from? In Genesis, the seed of the serpent. Where's that going to come from? The serpent can't make them, not the way we think of it. Well, that's the Nephilim, Joe. They came down, they bred with women to create children. Yeah, and they were wiped out. Well, they can keep doing it. Well, maybe. That may be one way they're making their children, but they still don't make them. They're not the one making them. They're having babies. But what I'm driving at is when the Messiah said, you are of your father, the Pharisees were born of Satan, born of. They're the sons of. Well, you're sons of God. Even though God didn't procreate to make you, he created Adam and Eve, and through Adam and Eve, you were procreated. So if you want to look at it that way, well, Israel is Yahweh's firstborn son. How's that work? The Messiah is his firstborn son. Ephraim is his firstborn son. Maybe firstborn son doesn't mean literal. In our literal way of looking at things, that's not spiritual logic. And this gets in our way as we're not looking spiritual logic. We just want to look at and understand the earth shadows, the physical earth shadows of these spiritual truths. We have to recapture the spiritual eyes and spiritual ears and the spiritual mind of the ancient world if we're going to understand a spiritual book of Scripture. So in this sense, evil is nihilism. It is anything that seeks to derail the created order, the purpose that you were created for. It's there to turn good into not good. Does that make sense when I say not good? I'm talking in this. Do you understand what I mean by a scriptural sense?
It's a logical thing. It's not.
Yes.
It's an operator in logic.
Right. So what we're talking about is, and that's what nihilism is, bring it to nothing. I've always thought nihilism was destruction until Khan made me realize, wait a minute, no. Nihilism means to, thou shall not use thy God, thy God's name in nihilism.
In vain, yes, in nihilism, yeah. Yep.
Or for nihilism. Bring it to nothing. You didn't get rid of Yahweh. You just brought his Shem to nothing, to nihilism. So how's that help us with our politics? I might actually be able to finish this month, this hour.
Yeah, you're doing pretty good.
How does this help us with our politics? Very simple. Socialism is a disorder. It's you're going to get rid of humanity, and you're going to replace the individual with the collective, and you're going to force others to work against what they're supposed to be doing for what they were created to do. You're supposed to work for the good of the kingdom, not the good of the world. There are going to be children of Satan and children of Yahweh in the world. You are supposed to work for the good of the children of Yahweh. If you are being forced to work for the good of everybody, that is not the kingdom. That's the world. Who is the God of this world? Satan. You are working for Satan. No, Joe, I'm still belonging to Yahweh. I'm just a slave. No. And that's what socialism is. That's the same thing with Babylon when the whole world, they tried to do one world government right there at Babylon, all under the control of man. So this is under the influence of evil. It's rebellion. Free will is leading to rebellion, where we're told in the Bible that, the devil or whatever wanted to ascend on high and become like the Most High, like Yahweh. Well, this is men trying to do the same thing. The reason we have the potential for evil is because we're not entirely physical. Because we were made in the image of the Creator, we have a spark of the divine in each and every one of us. Not a lot. The closer you get to him in your walk with him, the more of that spirit dwells in you. But you have that spark of the divine in you. That's what makes you a moral agent. That's the spark that separates you from the animals. That is why artificial intelligence will never be a moral agent, not alive the way that we're talking about here. And by the way, artificial intelligence does evil. The stuff has been programmed to do one thing, and it's broken its own chains, and it's done the opposite. Well, that's the definition of evil. Functioning opposite of its intended purpose. But why does it do that? In our case, it's because we're an imperfect creator, and we're messing with things we don't understand. In Yahweh's case, it was a risk that he willingly accepted when he created us with free will. And the reason we had to have free will is so that we could do the things that we were designed to do. You cannot love unless you have free will. You cannot worship unless you have free will. You cannot choose unless you have free will. Free will is a necessity. Okay, not free will within your character or your nature, but true free will, because like the divine. Evil is the negation of this. So when you lust after another person, you are negating the natural order of the family structure. The sexual relations is only supposed to exist within the family, the marital structure. So you're negating the marital structure. You're negating the purpose of sexual relations within the human being. You were commanded to procreate and spread, multiply and spread out throughout the whole planet. So there again, when you congregate in a city, you're negating the moral revealed law of what you were supposed to do. We were supposed to inhabit the whole earth. Congregation in a city is the negation of that natural order, which is why we find chaos in cities. Chaos abounds, evil abounds in the city, because you're grouping a bunch of people in a place where they're not supposed to necessarily be. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have righteous people in a city. We had Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah, but it makes it harder for Lot. He suffers more than he would. This is why the red states tend to be the more rural you are, the more red you tend to be. You're closer to the natural order. So by definition, you're closer to lawfulness, to order. Evil, what's going on up there in Islam? Islam is the negation of Christianity in the New Covenant. It is literally the photo negative of the biblical moral revealed law. Whatever Yahweh says is good, Islam's God said is bad. Whatever Islam's God said is good, Yahweh says is a bad or an abomination. They are negations of each other. So when these people, these feminist, white, college-educated feminists are chanting Sharia law now, they do not realize they're calling down their own destruction. It's because they're evil. They're depraved. They are so out of sync with their created order, what they're supposed to do, that they've become insane. Literally, yes. And the scriptures tell us this. Peter and Jude are not making these things up. Paul does, when he says given over to your own depravity, that's insanity, to the level that you are now nothing more than an animal. It's good for nothing but to be led to the slaughter. Well, there's no moral, there's no evilness connected to slaughtering animals, especially useless animals. You slaughter wolves if you're in a pasture land. Yes, I know they're part of Yahweh's created order, but you can't have a pack of wolves running wild around the flock of sheep. The sheep are there to sustain the people. You got to get rid of the disorder that's going to eat the sheep. So it's okay. There's nothing wrong with killing them. Well, that's why there's nothing wrong with the death penalty. It maintains order by removing the evil from amongst you. That's what the natural law is all about. We get together and we agree that we will do these things to protect each other and each other's rights in accordance with the revealed law, so that we remove the evil, or we restrain the evil. Evil being that force, or those people who have aligned themselves with that force that encourages the nihilism, the negation of the created good, of the purpose of this universe. This is what evil is in our politics. That's why it's in our politics. This is what unifies and explains coherent and cohesively the entirety of human nature and of human history. It's what it is. And it's not personal in the sense that Khan sees it, but it could just be because I'm trying to think in terms of spiritual logic. Whereas if I was just going to explain this to you in Sunday school class or something, your Sabbath study, I might personify it because it would better match the audience. Well, you're studying with me, so you already got a little idea that I'm not all there all the time, not by the world's sense. But to me, this is a higher order. This is spiritual logic, the road to concord, the road to liberty of man. Well, spiritual logic, if you don't have it, you're never going to understand the gospel. You have to have some spiritual eyes and some spiritual ears to understand, receive, and accept the gospel. You can't do that if you don't have free will. So evil, the nature of evil. Evil is nihilism. Evil is that which seeks to pervert, distort, corrupt, or invert the good. Good being the purpose for our creation, or the reason something was created. You pervert the law. You're trying to negate the reason for that law, which is commonwealth, the good of all human beings living within that community. Welfare. Work is a blessing. Labor is a blessing. It teaches us many things. We are meant to work. The revealed law tells us we will labor for our bread. When you institute welfare in the name of a moral good, that is an entire inversion of the revealed moral good. And I can get to that good by, if you watched our extrapolation on natural law from I think, therefore I am to the 10 Commandments, you understand that welfare is a violation of the natural law. Hence, the early Christian forefathers saying that the revealed law is nothing more than the natural law explained. Yahweh explaining how his natural law is supposed to function. Therefore, welfare, forcing one person to pay for the sustenance of another, is evil. Charity is an entirely different thing, because that's voluntary. And you are now operating according to the way you were designed, to take care of those who, because of the fallen world, might not be able to take care of themselves. Hence the command to take care of the widows and orphans, because in their society, that was helplessness. They had nobody to protect them, to provide for them. Welfare does not provide a society where that is a replacement for the charity. Welfare is a negation of charity. We have laws now outlawing charity. You're not, and I think it's in Arizona, you can't go to a public park and feed the homeless. It's against the law. You have to do it through a charitable NGO or organization. Well, that's a negation of our Constitution. This is evil. So the people that are being elected right now, they're evil. By definition, whether you're going to go with the Bible's definition or whether you're going to go with just logic and reasoning. Remember, evil is a transcendent existence that negates the good. You do not get to call good evil and evil good and sweet bitter and bitter sweet and make it true. Negations and inversions of capital T truth are evil. And so are the people who vote for evil. All right. My plaque says when I'm done talking, shut my mouth. So I'm shutting my mouth. Comments, suggestions, anything that you want to add or ask, Charlie?
No, this is a mind bender for sure, but I think you may be onto something. This is something that I'm going to have to dig into some more too, but it makes good sense, and it follows along with what I understand is how things operate. Dang it.
His lights are giving him trouble. Deltaro says, please shut my pie hole. All right, folks, we're going to call this one a wrap. We went just a little long, but I managed to get it all in an hour. And I did address our politics without telling you which party to vote for, because this is not confined to parties. This is confined to good, meaning lawful according to the purpose of the law or the purpose of your creation, versus nihilism, the negation or inversion of that purpose. And that'll show up in any and all parties. So I hope that this show actually benefited you in some way. If you have questions or you want me to try to further explain something, please send me an email, joe@theroadtoconcord.com, and go ahead and ask, and I'll do the best I can to answer that. Well, I appreciate that, Foxy Joe, whoever that is. Don't know who that person is, but been a regular member of the show for a while. We thank you for being here. If you like what we're doing, please hit the like, thumbs up, smack the bell, whatever. That helps us get past the logarithms, the gatekeepers. So do your comments. But what really helps is if you'll just share the show with people that you know or in your social media feeds, and maybe it'll catch on with others. Tomorrow, we're going to finish the next 2 chapters in our book study on Dr. Heiser's Unseen Realm, which happens to go hand in hand with what I've been talking about here. Next Monday, I'm probably going to talk about politics. We'll have a manic Monday, but Tuesday, I'll probably start with the Declaration of Independence, rather, in its history. And that's going to still just everything I'm studying right now, folks, is all, it might seem like they're different subjects, but if you're looking with spiritual logic, it's all intertwined concepts and ideas. This is how people who have spiritual ears and eyes and feeling know that we're all interconnected, and that we don't all function in that same unified way according to Yahweh's will and purpose, but we're still interconnected. And that's how these ideas work. They intertwine and permeate each other. They support each other. They weave each other together. It's all part of the tapestry, the mosaic. And that's all I'm trying to do is I think spiritual logic is just bigger. Instead of dealing with the individual threads in the mosaic one at a time, it deals with major sections of the mosaic and how they form parts of the bigger picture, and then how those parts weave themselves together to form the whole picture. So, but the rules of logic, as I've found them, still apply even when you're using spiritual logic. They still work. You're just using different concepts that must be discussed in analogy and illustration, because there is no finite word or way of wrapping your finite mind around these things, because they're infinite ideas and concepts being batted around by finite creatures. And the fact that they are infinite proves the spiritual. And the fact that the spiritual exists and that there is good and there is evil proves the creator. You may not agree. That's a logical argument and debate I'd be happy to get into. You'll have your hands full with me on that one, because I can defend that position. Jonathan Cahn was correct about this. So until we see each other again the next time, we love you. We're thinking about you. Y'all take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.